A federal judge cleared the way for New York's so-called green light law, ruling against the Trump administration's effort to block the state from giving people driver's licenses without requiring proof that they are in the U.S. legally. U.S. District Judge Ann M. Nardacci found that the Justice Department, which sued New York Governor Kathy Hochul and State Attorney General Letitia James in February, had failed to prove its claims that the state law sought to invalidate federal law or that the measure unlawfully regulates or unlawfully discriminates against the federal government.
As I said from the start, our laws protect the rights of all New Yorkers and keep our communities safe. I will always stand up for New Yorkers and the rule of law, James said in a statement.
U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi alleged, when announcing the lawsuit, that Hochul and James were prioritizing illegal aliens over American citizens, as the controversial state law blocks federal agents trying to enforce immigration laws from seeing illegal immigrants' criminal driving records during traffic stops. Nardacci wrote in her ruling that her job was not to evaluate the desirability of the law as a policy matter, but to determine whether the Trump administration's arguments prove its claims that the statute violates the U.S. Constitution's Supremacy Clause, which establishes that federal laws overrule state laws. The administration has failed to state such a claim, Nardacci wrote. The Green Light Law, also known as the Driver's License Access and Privacy Act, was adopted in part to improve road safety, as people sometimes drove without a license or without having passed a driving test. Under the measure, it is easier for these license holders to receive auto insurance. The law states that people who do not have a valid Social Security number can submit alternative forms of ID, including valid passports and driver's licenses issued in other countries. Applicants must still receive a driver's permit and pass a road test to qualify for a standard driver's license. The legislation does not apply to commercial driver's licenses. Earlier, U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy was especially critical of New York when he outlined problems uncovered in a federal audit of the state's issuance of non-domiciled commercial driver licenses and threatened harsh consequences if state leaders don't address his concerns.
As we've done this nationwide audit, we found the worst offender, which is the state of New York. 53% of New York's non-domiciled CDLs were issued unlawfully or illegally. Now, what New York does is, if an applicant comes in and they have a work authorization for 30 days, 60 days, 1 year, New York automatically issues them an 8-year commercial driver's license. That's contrary to the law. That's one offense. But we also found that New York many times won't even verify whether they have a work authorization, they have a visa, or they're in the country legally. So they're just giving 8-year commercial driver's licenses to people who are coming through their DMV and sending them out on American roadways. And again, they're endangering the lives of American families. I don't like that I have to do this, but the law requires me to do this. I'm going to give New York 30 days, because that's what the law requires, to come into compliance with the rules that have been long-standing at the Department of Transportation. If they come into compliance, we're going to work with them. If New York refuses to come into compliance, because Kathy Hochul, for some reason, believes that we should have unqualified truck drivers on American roadways, we are going to pull tens of millions of dollars as phase one for the state of New York. We don't want that to be the case. We don't want to have conflict with New York or California or Minnesota. That's not the mission here. The mission is to get compliance, to make sure we have safe commercial drivers on American roadways and Americans are safe. That is the mission. But if we have state governors who are unwilling to cooperate and collaborate and make sure that Americans are safe, we will use every single tool at our disposal to make sure they do come into compliance. And if they don't, the federal taxpayer, the American taxpayer, should not be funding these states. So we will pull every dollar possible from every single state that's unwilling to work with this administration and these long-standing rules to make sure that when an American and a family gets in a car, they shouldn't be worried that they have an unqualified foreigner operating an 80,000-pound big rig that could endanger their lives. By the way, or an unqualified driver operating a motor coach. Again, if you get on a bus, you're going to travel across the country, you'd expect that that driver has been well-trained and they're well-qualified to operate that vehicle. We've seen in recent news stories that that's not the case, and when bad drivers that aren't qualified from other countries drive a bus, many people get hurt and some people die. We find that to be unacceptable, and again, we will use every tool at our disposal to make sure that this ends. We'll take your questions in just a moment, but I want to highlight an additional point. There's a lot of politics in Washington, a lot of political fights, a lot of disagreement in Washington. This should not be one of them. Everyone, a Democrat and Republican, when they get on American roadways, they want to be safe. They don't want to have unqualified commercial drivers on our roads. This is not political. And again, there's a debate about what we do with those who come into the country illegally. I have a viewpoint. I share the viewpoint of the president. And Kathy Hochul, Gavin Newsom, they may disagree with the president. That's beyond the point. What we're talking about is something very, very different. If you come into the country illegally, or you have a short window of time in the country, should you actually be entitled to a commercial driver's license where you operate on American roadways? I think the answer to that, every American would say no. We only want the best qualified individuals operating on American roadways. And as a base level set, you want to speak English because this is about the safety of all of us who travel. And so I want to be clear, this is not about politics. This is about good government. This is about safety. And this is about the right people to operate these really big rigs that are challenging to operate, and you need to be well qualified on the American road. So with that, we'll take questions. Grady?
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. One question on this and then an unrelated topic. My first is, I know you reviewed 200 of these cases. Do you have any sense of how many of these licenses were issued illegally, and if it would impact the shipment or movement of goods across the country?
So, and Derek will correct me if I'm wrong. The total percent was 53%. Was it 23,000, Derek? Or
They have issued 32,000
I was close.
non-domiciled. And so during our investigation, during our audit, we found it 53%.
So assuming that rate is the same, you would expect at least 10,000, maybe more, to be revoked.
If you're basing it off of the numbers what we found.
And would that impact shipment of goods across the country?
Go ahead.
Well, at the end of the day, it's about safety. And carriers, good carriers who are out there who are employing drivers are going to ensure that they are safe, and they will work together with the shippers to ensure that we have goods that are moving across America. But at the end of the day, it's making sure they get there safely.